Hey everybody, WatchThisReview here with a look at Jon Stewart from DC Universe Classics, Wave 11, aka the Green Lantern Wave. So called because it features 3 Green Lanterns, including the Collect and Connect Kilowog, in addition to Green Lantern villain Shark and Sinestro Corps Cyborg Superman. With fan choice The Question along for the ride, as well as Steppenwolf and Deadman. Now, for people not familiar with Jon Stewart, he happens to be one of the replacement lanterns for the Earth space sector. Basically, when Hal Jordan's incapacitated, Jon Stewart or one of the others will take over. Jon Stewart was probably the figure I was most looking forward to this wave, so without any further ado, let's take a closer look. He comes with the left arm of Kilowog. Mine apparently has some sort of a separation here at the bicep, which looks kind of funky. I'm not sure if that's a design thing or maybe a production error. As well as 2 energy projections, some sort of gun, and the more typical fist. Conspicuously absent is an actual lantern accessory, which one would typically come to expect with a Green Lantern figure, as it's essential to their duties and charges up their power rings, but frankly these other props do make up for it because you can only have so many lanterns in the first place. You'll also notice that they have closed fists, so they can't even hold a lantern. Unlike the earlier Hal Jordan, who was included with an open hand. I was really happy to find Stewart in Toys R Us today, just because my Walmart seems to have leapfrogged over Wave 11 and jumped directly to 12, and my Target is as my Walmart was, basically behind on several waves, but, it caught up, and there were a bunch of Wave 11s in today. However, out of them, Jon Stewart was the only one that really stood out, and if the Question had been there, I probably picked him up as well. In general, I've been less inclined to pick up DC Universe Classics just to assemble a Collect and Connect ever since the rate hike, plus, at this point I think I'm more going for characters I really like than, just stuff to bulk out the collection, because I am starting to run out of space a little bit. But Jon Stewart is definitely a cool addition to my collection since he's one of my favorite Green Lanterns. I've never really been a huge Hal Jordan fan, and I didn't like Kyle Rayner, so, because I wasn't really following the comics, I probably best remember Jon from his Justice League and Justice League Unlimited cartoon runs. Other than that, he has appeared in a few of the Justice League trade paperbacks I've read over the past year, so I'm definitely not an expert on the subject, but I do like this figure and I'm a fan of the character. Now the head sculpt, really stands out. I like the amount of detail on it. For some reason it looks like you have more detail than you typically do with a lot of the other figures. It could just be my imagination playing tricks on me, but there's just something different about it. Maybe there's more, the facial expression just seems more real. I also like the hair. Seems like there's a bit more detail. The body sculpt, though, is just your typical DC Universe sculpt, and then you have glossy bands here. But the rest of the costume isn't glossy. I'm not sure if that's just a representation of the character, or... the other thing is, I noticed that there's a paint flaw here on the chest, where I guess some of the gloss or whatever didn't completely coat it, and then another scrape over here. But because, he has a full black costume, for the most part, it's tough to notice little things like that when you're just glancing at stores, and frankly, it doesn't bother me, because I'm just happy I managed to finally pick this one up. From the side view, the head does look hokey, as a lot of the other ones do, just because the proportions look a bit wrong, and then from behind it looks even weirder. Obviously, you'd probably be posing him in an intact position, so... no biggie. Now, if you're familiar with the DC Universe Classics line, he has the standard articulation, so I won't go into great detail, but as you can see, we have a pretty cool little power ring here. It looks a bit more detailed than the Hal Jordan's one was. Hal Jordan's was a lot smaller, it looks kind of fluky. This is the Hal Jordan, I believe, from the 2-pack with, how's it pronounced, Abensur, I believe? We'll stand them right next to each other to get a idea of scale. So it's basically the same height. Sculpts do look a little bit different though for some reason. I believe they went with the flatter torso sculpt on the Hal Jordan as opposed to the more rounded muscular version they used on the Jon Stewart. The actual torso here, around the abdominal section, seems to stick out a bit more, as opposed to this one, which looks considerably more flat. Height-wise, he's a pretty standard DC Universe Classic 6.5 inches, which is a pretty consistent size for the entire line, with very few figures going above it, and then basically only the Titans really going under it. Would I recommend this figure? Certainly if you're a Green Lantern fan, or a fan of the character, obviously. Other than that, this is basically just your standard body sculpt with new hands tossed in. I believe these cuffs or whatever are also new, and then a completely new head sculpt. However, as mentioned, in terms of body sculpt, this is nothing new, although these accessories are really new and really cool. As for our good friend Kilowog, I'm afraid that he'll probably remain a disembodied arm, just because there aren't really that many characters in the wave that I'm interested in. Between that and the rate hike, I probably won't be picking up anybody else except for maybe the Question. And I mean, the Cyborg Superman was originally going to pick up, but I saw him in stores, wasn't terribly impressed. Mostly because it uses the same color as the Harley Quinn for the red, which I absolutely hate. But Kilowog in general uses the same parts as the Brimstone, except for we have new hands, then a new torso sculpt to allow for the head as a separate piece. So, I mean, if I ever decide to do it on a whim, I could just pull off one of Brimstone's arms and toss on Kilowog's. So, you know, just for fun or whatever. But until next time, folks,